Hello everybody, we are back with the Audeze LCD-1 and we are beginning the comparison process where we compare the LCD-1 to other headphones. The headphone that we're going to start the comparison with is the Hifiman Sundara, a headphone that is cheaper than the LCD-1 by $50 MSRP, but you can easily find the Sundaras for about $100 cheaper, if not more so if you go on eBay. So the question will be whether the Sundara stack up against the LCD-1. Now, because we want to break this down because there's so much unnecessary hype behind the LCD-1, we're going to break this down into 3 separate videos: the bass, the mids, and the treble. So today we're going to talk about the bass response for the LCD-1 compared to the Sundaras. We have 3 songs queued. Our 3 songs are Mountains by Hans Zimmer, Pure Water by Migos and Mustard, and Drum Solo by Jack Bruce and Simon Phillips. I have both headphones connected to an A/B switch, which is itself connected to the Monolith AAA desktop amplifier. Now, because these 2 headphones have very different impedance, it's 16 or 13.5, depending on who you want to believe from Audeze. That's the LCD-1, whereas the Sundara, I believe, are 37 ohm headphones. So let's increase for the LCD-1 to -25. That's what we're going to start with. And we are ready to start this test. Here we go. And as the song starts out, there's supposed to be this rumble in the background, and I definitely do not hear it on the Audeze. So I'm going to have to increase the volume. Let's go to -20. And at -20, I start hearing a little bit of that rumble, but it's still very, very quiet. If I'm very quiet and I'm just paying close attention, I can hear it. But it's frankly quite muted. So let's increase to -15. Okay, now at -15, I finally start hearing that rumble, but it's still a little lean. So the reverberation is very, very fast, and there's no real substance to it. Now, by substance, I mean it rolls off fairly early in the sub-bass region. At least that's the way it's being presented. So that there's no rumble. It's not a rumble like they're supposed to be in this song. It's just very muted. Otherwise, there's a good separation between these, when you do hear the sub-bass, between that and the rest of the mix. So there's no muddiness. So it's not as if there's any bass frequency that's muddying the mids or the treble, and that's not happening. The soundstage is fairly average. It doesn't sound like you're sitting outside in a large field. It's more like the effect that you're sitting in a medium-sized room, like your living room, and you have your nice bookshelf speakers cranked up. Now we're here getting to the crescendo, and we should be able to tell how the bass sounds with the organ coming in and everything playing at max volume. -15, I can barely hear myself talk. So I hear the organ, and I hear a bit of that rumble in the background, and it sounds a little muddy at this point. That rumble in the background with the organ meld together, and there's no hardline separation between the two. And the rumble is still a little lacking. It's a little lean. So it does this weird thing where the organ simply doesn't have any real presence. The organ is supposed to be the meat and potatoes of the song. The organ is supposed to overpower everything else, and typically does with other headphones. The LCD-1 doesn't let that happen, which can be a good thing. But the bad side of it is it's supposed to happen, right? I mean, that's the mixture of the song. So you get the organ, and then you get that original rumble that's supposed to be playing throughout the song. And when the organ's playing and that rumble is playing, it just gets a bit muddy. Those 2 frequencies start melding, and you can't differentiate between the organ and the rumble, that sub-bass rumble. They both sound practically the same at that point. which is a number one problem. Number two problem is that it's still lacking substance. It's not as if it sounds like this. Now, I'm just doing this for example, right? Here's the rumble that's theoretically supposed to happen. Right? It's just meaty. And then with the LCD-1, it sounds more muted than meaty. It sounds like that you can barely hear it. It's more of a groan than a yell, so to speak. And I attribute that to the LCD-1 just have a light bass response. It's not neutral, guys. Anybody who's saying that these headphones are neutral, precise neutral, they have a different definition of neutral. And neutral for everybody is different, fine, whatever. If you want to accept that, that's great. But for respects, in actually talking about neutrality, flatness, that nothing is emphasized, nothing is underemphasized, everything is just as even as can possibly be, straight line, this isn't straight line because that sub bass is so lean. And on top of that, it starts interfering with the organ frequency, that you don't get neutrality, you just get more of a muddy effect. You get this muted, muddy effect in the background. And then what you end up hearing is all the other instruments that overpower the organ, which is not supposed to happen. The organ is supposed to be the central player in this mix. And when you get to the crescendo about 2.5 minutes in, that's all you should be hearing. You should be hearing the organ and you should be hearing the other stuff underneath. The treble stuff you should be hearing underneath. Unfortunately, that's not how it's being presented. All right, so let's switch to the Sundara. I have the Sundara on my head, and I can tell you right now, the Sundara definitely fit better around my ears, and they fully encircle my ears. These are not oval-shaped ear pads, but they are all the way around. They are more open than the LCD-1. They're both open back headphones, but the Sundara have a much more open sound, meaning I can hear everything from the outside in, whereas the LCD-1 sounds more closed off. And this is not a minor difference. This is a night and day difference, how different these two feel just sitting on your head. All right, so let's start with, let me make sure it's switched. It is. Let's go with the Sundaras on mountains. Here we go. We're still at -15, and it sounds fairly muted at -15 because these are 37 ohm compared to half at 16 ohm. So let's increase. We're now at -10. -10 seems to be about what -20 was with the LCD-1, so I'm going to increase again to -5. And I can hear that rumble, and the rumble with the Sundara seems to be a little bit more present, but it's definitely not any more lean than the LCD-1. I can hear, frankly, it sounds more airy, more roomy. It sounds like not being stuck in a medium-sized living room, but being outside in your backyard, essentially what it sounds like. It's just so much more soundstage in comparison to the LCD-1. It's a noticeable difference. It's not a minor, maybe just a little bit more. It's very much different. So that sub-bass rumble is, like I said, it's probably not any more lean than the LCD-1. It might have just a little bit more substance to it. Now, that may be my imagination. I might be thinking, oh, maybe the Sundara sound a little bit more bassy, but they're not. They're not particularly bassy headphones. So at the very least, I would say up until this point, they sound fairly close to the LCD-1 with that sub-bass rumble. So let's skip ahead to midway of the song. And I'm going to increase the volume to -2.5. This should equal about -15 on the LCD-1. Oh yeah, that organ clearly comes out more audibly, and that rumble definitely comes out more audibly than they did on the LCD-1. And the two sound different. The rumble sounds like rumble, and the organ sounds like the organ. There's no muddiness as there was with the LCD-1. The other instruments, the string instruments, the percussion, all that stuff, they sound clear, distinct from the bass. So let's go back to about, let's say 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Let me make sure this. Yeah. So let's say 156. What I want to do is listen at -5. So I'm going to bring this back down to -5 on the Sundara. Then I'm going to switch to the LCD-1 and bring that down to -15 and listen for any differences. Here we go. Right now with the Sundara, it's at -5. Yeah, there's a clear difference between the organ and the sub bass. The organ comes in, and then as the organ is dying, the sub bass comes up. So they replace each other. There's no muddiness. One frequency is dying, the other one is coming up, it's building up. Okay, so let's switch to the LCD-1. And let's go back to 156. Here we go. Let me bring this down to -15. Almost forgot. All right, here we go. Yeah, there's a bit more muffledness with the LCD-1 than there is with the Sundara. So what happens, as I said, with the Sundara, the organ hits, and as it fades, the rumble comes up, so they replace each other. Well, the LCD-1 has the organ, and then when the sub bass starts coming up, they start interfering. Those frequencies start interfering, and then you don't know what's what until the sub bass just dies off completely and the organ comes back. So there's a bit of muddiness with the LCD-1 that's not quite present with the Sundara. Now, you may say this is a difference in your hearing. Okay, so let's say that it's a difference in my hearing, that perhaps I'm imagining it. At the very least, I hear no difference then. They both sound the same in that if you think that the Sundara is no better on the frequency graph than the LCD-1. Fine. I'm telling you that I'm hearing a bit more muddiness with the LCD-1 as those two frequencies exchange. Whereas with the Sundara, they have a better separation of the two. They don't sound muddy. Now, if you fine-tune with EQ, or if you have the volume set at the right level, and you have the LCD-1 sitting just the right perfect way on your head, then you may not get all that muddiness. But I am, in fact, hearing a bit more muddiness in the LCD-1 than I was with the Sundara. Moreover, the LCD-1 is simply more closed-off sounding than the Sundara. The Sundara have noticeably more soundstage, more air in the presentation. Okay, so let's go to Pure Water by Migos. We are currently set at -15, so I'm going to bring this down to -20. And here we go. Vocal sounds clear. And now here comes the bass, and it sounds, like I said, pretty light. So there's a difference between boomy bass, like your neighbor's kid has a subwoofer in his trunk that's a whom, whum, whum. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not a good thing. Then there's a lean bass where you don't feel the sub bass at all. And it's really hard to get that sub bass. And that's what I'm feeling, that it's hard to get that sub bass, and that sub bass really should be present in this song. Instead, I hear the mids, the vocals, and I hear this muffled sub bass, this muffled bass. It's so light, almost like muted bass is what it is. I'll increase -15. And -15 is as loud as I want to take it. That's almost close to my threshold. And even at -15 at this volume, there's no real impact to the bass. I mean, it's supposed to go dum dum. It's supposed to go dum 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 dum. Right? That's supposed to be the bass that's playing. That should be the subwoofer sound, and I am not hearing it. I mean, I'm hearing it muffled. I don't know if you heard that. I'm putting my hand in front of my mouth, and that's Imagine that and muted at the same time. That's the effect that the LCD-1 gives. You're not getting the bass. You're getting an impression of the bass. It's so light. And it's a problem when you have songs like Pure Water, hip-hop songs that rely upon bass and sub-bass to an exceptional degree. That's what gives the song substance. It's there for emphasis. It's there for the rhythm. And if you don't have it, all you have then is a vocal-centric song. There are hip-hop songs that are vocal-centric, obviously, but not this. This is supposed to have that bass, supposed to go boom, 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 boom. And the LCD-1 simply doesn't provide it. All right, so let's go to the Sundara. We're currently at negative 15. I know that's not going to be enough for the Sundara, so I'm going to increase to negative 10 first and then go from there. And let's restart. Here we go. The vocals sound just as clear as the LCD-1. The bass on the Sundara seems to have just a little bit more emphasis, just slightly more emphasis. The bass is not interacting with the mids, just like with the LCD-1. I'm going to increase to negative 5. The bass sounds just a little bit more present than the LCD-1. Slight boost. You can hear boom, 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 boom. It's a little bit more audible than it was on the LCD-1. Let's bring it back down to negative 10, then negative 15. Even at low volume at negative 15, which is normal listening volume, where you can hear what's going on around you, that bass sounds more present than it did on the LCD-1. Now that bass presence is not a night and day difference, okay? So that's not what I want to imply, and that's certainly not what I want you to walk away with. It's not like you put on the Sundaras and you go, oh my God, these are really bassy headphones in comparison. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to emphasize that the Sundara, in comparison to the LCD-1, has a slight boost to the bass. Now, you could say, look, maybe you're just imagining it. Maybe it's the placement of the driver. Maybe it's because it's a different driver. You're hearing something slightly different. Okay, that may be, right? Believe what you will. But it's not any worse than the LCD-1. I think that the bass response for the Sundara is slightly elevated compared to the LCD-1. Now, you might say that's not neutral. Well, we can debate about that. But when a song like Pure Water has bass and is supposed to have that bass boominess, at least some portion of it, one headphone is not even providing any form of boominess. It's more muffledness and more quietness. And another one has a slight more volume to the bass, the sub bass. I have to point that out. And so that's the way that it's being presented to me, that the LCD-1 sounds a little bit light compared to the Sundara. All right, so let's go to the last song, which is Drum Solo by Jack Bruce and Simon Phillips. I've got the LCD-1 back on my head, switched. I'm going to bring this back down to negative 20. At the beginning of the song, what happens is you have the audience clapping and all that. And that can be ear-piercing with some headphones. So this will be a good chance for me to test whether or not there's ear-piercingness when the crowd starts yelling at the very beginning of the song. And then we're going to talk about whether or not the bass instrument, the drum, has this effect, the sound effect, as if the bottom of the drum is falling like boing, boing, and how visceral the bass or the drum sounds when the drummer starts riffing. Because that visceralness comes from the drum stick hitting the top of that drum membrane, and then thwack, thwack sound, whether it comes out as an actual sharp detail or it's muffled. All right, so where are we? Drum solo, here we go, at negative 20 decibels with the LCD-1. No ear piercing with the crowd, so that was good. I'm going to increase the volume to negative 15. And I don't quite hear that boing, boing sound. It's muffled. If just a slight elevation in the bass probably would bring that out. It's not boing boing. It's more like boom boom, a little bit muffled. Yeah. I can hear left and right as the drummer is going from left to right on the drum set, but it doesn't sound wide. It sounds like he's in a small living room, essentially. So it's a little bit more closed off experience. And now he's starting to riff. I'm going to increase the volume to -10. And I want to know if it's a visceral, sharp twack, twack. And I do hear a little bit of the treble spike, just a little bit, but most of the time I'm hearing a kind of a muffled drum signature. Almost like there's a thin layer of a sheet draped over the drums that's absorbing some of that energy. So it's not a visceral effect at all. I hear a little bit of that energy. I hear just a little bit of that energy, but it's subdued. It's like there's something on top of the drum that's preventing all of that strike, the power behind the drumstick, the arm coming down on top of the membrane. There should be a loud thwack sound, and that's not what I'm hearing. It's more rounded off. It's a little bit more muffled, a little bit more pulled back. There's not a lot of energy there. What energy there is it's almost a glimpse of what could be. Unfortunately, Audeze doesn't give it. Okay, so let's switch to the Sundara. Okay. And I'm going to increase the volume. Currently we're at -22, so I'm going to go up to -15 at the very beginning. And we're going to listen again to whether or not my ears get popped by the crowd. Here we go. Nope. Sounds pretty subdued to me, so let's stop. I'm going to increase to about -10, so I can get it about the same volume as I had it at with the LCD-1. Here we go again. Yep, not ear piercing, so that's good. It's about the same experience as with the LCD-1. I'm going to increase the volume to -5. And when I hear... I don't hear the drum falling out effect on the Sundara either. It's not boing, boing. I'm not hearing it on this either. So in that respect, it sounds the same as the LCD-1. I'm going to increase to -2. Yeah, it's about the same experience with the lack of sub bass, you know, like the drum falling out. The same experience as with the LCD-1. And right now he's going to start riffing. It sounds about the same to me with the LCD-1, where I can almost feel that there would be energy there, but it's pulled back. I don't hear it. And we're at -2 decibels. I'll increase to -1, then 0. Yeah. I hear the drum riffing almost the same as with the LCD-1. I think that I don't know. I can't be sure whether the LCD-1 has a little bit more energy to it than the Sundara. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to about, I think, 1 minute. Let me see. Yeah. We're going to go back to 1 minute. I'm going to increase the volume for the Sundara to -1.5. I'm going to listen for 10 seconds. I'm going to switch to the LCD-1, bring the volume back down to about -15, and try to compare. Okay, so here we go with the Sundara first. Okay. Switching to the LCD-1. Bringing the volume down to -15. Here we go. Gosh, it sounds practically the same. I don't hear any difference. So in that respect, these two headphones for drum solo sound the same. The effect of the drum falling out, like boing boing, that doesn't exist. on either of these. I mean, there's so much potential. Like, if they had a bit more sub bass and a slight boost, you might get it. But neither of these two do it. You get very close, but not quite. You don't get the cigar. And then there's the visceralness of the drum riffs. Neither of them have it. In fact, the tonality sounds very, very similar to each other. If there are minor differences, I can't tell. It's certainly possible that somebody might be able to tell a minor difference here and there, but for all intents and purposes, going back and forth, when he's riffing, on both it sounds like there's some sort of, thin layer of a sheet or something covering the drum heads, absorbing some of that energy, and that energy is necessary to get that spike, thwack, thwack sound. It doesn't sound like a sharp, crisp sound. It's more muffled on both. So for this song alone, I would say they both perform the same. I hear no practical differences between the two for drum solo. All right, so let's talk about conclusions. For bass, I think that neither is a bassy headphone. Both are a little bass light, I think. I think they both have a rolled off bass. But for mountains and for pure water, I thought that the Sundara had a slight boost, just a tiny, tiny bit, doing an A and B test. For drum solo, I heard that they're both basically the same. I can't notice any difference. What I can say without any doubt is that the Sundara have larger soundstage. It sounds wider, sounds more open. And with that extra width, a little bit more openness, you start to hear a little bit better separation in the bass and the sub-bass region. Because with songs like Mountains, when you have the organ coming down and the rumble sound coming up, with that extra separation, slightly more soundstage, you can hear those two different frequencies as they pass each other. And you can hear them come back as the rumble comes back down and the organ comes back in. You can actually hear the difference. There's a bit more separation there. Whereas with the LCD-1, because of that more closed-off sensation, because it's a narrower soundstage, when the organ comes down and the rumble comes up and vice versa, they just meld. And so you get this muddy effect for a few seconds until the frequencies kind of die away. That's number two major difference, at least for that one particular song. Overall, I can't say that the LCD-1 is noticeably better in reproducing cleaner bass than the Sundara. I don't think that's the case at all. Nor can I say that the LCD-1 represents better sub-bass and bass detail than the Sundara. I don't think that's the case. I have some evidence from Mountains to justify that. As far as getting the actual visceral character of some of the bass, I think neither really does the songs any real justice. So with the drum solo, you don't get that thwack, thwack, sharp, crisp sound with the riff on either. With Pure Water, although I hear the Sundara have a little bit more substance to the sub bass and the dum 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 than the LCD's one's more muffled, boom 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 boom, that sort of effect. I hear that, but it's a minor difference. It's not night and day. Consequently, I would say I'd be happy saying they both sound practically the same in that respect as well. Overall, you've got a headphone from Hifiman for bass only. We're talking about that sounds practically, for all intents and purposes, the same as the LCD-1 on these tests. And it's $100 cheaper. Go make your choice. If all you want to know is about the bass, if that was the only question lingering in your mind, which one of these two sounds more bassy? Neither of them sounds more bassy. They're, at the very least, they're exactly the same or very practically the same. And if I had to edge out a headphone with a little bit more bass, it would be the Sundara. But I'd be really splitting hairs. I think both of them for bass sound very close to each other. If this has been of some help, if you enjoy my content or any of my other content, please consider subscribing to me on Patreon. Even just a couple of bucks a month helps me save up money so I can buy new and old gear to review thoroughly for you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. If you're not a subscriber but you like this stuff, hey, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. We're over 800 subscribers now, and we have a month left to go. Let's see how far we can take it. If you want me to review a particular product that I currently own, please look at the product review form in the description section below. Fill it out, submit it, and I'll get to your request as soon as I can. I hope all of you have a wonderful, amazing rest of your weekend, and please do take care.